up. What came over me? Who am I? It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it. But
Even though she is 78 years old, Sally Field is still a Hollywood star. A woman who has been through all the highs and lows and now has nothing left to show. She has won 2 Oscars, played many memorable parts, and left a legacy based on honesty, strength, and emotion. But there is a side of Sally that people rarely see behind the cheers and moving acts. It's about a woman who remembers every slight, every lie, and every co-star who thought she was weak because she was nice. With the calm that comes with age and the knowledge that comes with experience, Sally Field has chosen to speak out. It's time for her to name the 6 stars she will never forgive because they hurt her deeply. These weren't small disagreements or short-lived tensions. They were intense fights and deep emotional wounds that changed her work for decades. Sally is now ready to tell everything for the first time. You believe you've seen the real Hollywood? Not so fast. That world will look very different after you find out what you're about to do. That's when Burt Reynolds, the heartbreaker, came into the story. Everyone thought Burt and Sally were the perfect couple in Hollywood in the late 1970s. People fell in love with them because of how effortlessly they worked together in Smokey and the Bandit. They were love, laughter, and lightning in a bottle. But there was a very different story going on behind that bright picture. One that didn't end like a fairy tale. Behind the cameras, that love story from a fairy tale started to fall apart. Later, Sally would say that Burt Reynolds wasn't the lovable bad guy that Americans loved. Instead, he was a man who was obsessed with control and had to be in charge of every talk, every moment, and every choice. He slowly broke her confidence by making fun of her looks and intelligence until she started to doubt her own worth. In public, he was loving and charming, and he told her how great she was all the time. Once the lights went out, there was only a sharp quiet that could cut. Sally took off the glitz in her autobiography in pieces to show what was really going on. Burt Reynolds didn't want a partner. He wanted something to own. Every part of their lives, personal and professional, revolved around himself. He talked over her and stopped her. She wasn't as good as him. He used her as a decoration. She finally understood that losing him wasn't the only thing that hurt her. It was when she realized she had become lost. Even worse, Burt was very good at playing with her feelings. At one point, he was kind and loving. The next time, he punished her by making her stay quiet. It wasn't love. It was control that looked like loyalty. Sally slowly felt like she was going away. At the height of her fame, she felt anonymous when she was with Burt. "I was there," she said later, "but it wasn't me. Not all of me." Even though they were together for years, Sally said she never really knew who Burt was. The man she saw when the cameras stopped rolling wasn't the handsome, sure-of-himself man that everyone loved. She tried anyway. She meant for it to work. To think that love could make things better. "I wished I could love him. He hurt me, but I loved him." Everyone saw him as the thief. Brave, unstoppable, and untouchable. But to Sally, he was sadness with a smile on his face. Let's start with Tommy Lee Jones, who is full of himself. A lot of hope filled Sally's heart when she joined Back Roads. The script was honest and emotional, and her co-star was a man known for being very intense. It seemed like the right chance. But she hit a wall on the first day. That wall was Tommy himself. He was more than cold. He wasn't interested. There was no talk, warmth, or relationship. He would show up on set, say his lines with perfect accuracy, and then leave as soon as the camera stopped moving. As an actress who lived on emotional truth, Sally could not stand that lack of interest. She later remembered that we were meant to play 2 broken people who fall in love. But I did it by myself. She tried to connect with him by talking, making jokes, and asking about their roles during breaks, but he barely noticed her. He made her feel small and like she didn't belong in the same frame as him. When Back Roads first came out, critics said that the stars didn't have much chemistry with each other. What they didn't know was that the tension started long before the cameras started rolling. Sally thought that every day on that set was colder than the last. She was completely worn out from working with someone who wouldn't see her as a person, not just as a co-star. Tom Lee Jones, and she never worked together again. She never said anything bad about him in public, but whenever his name came up, she spoke with a quiet frost that says more than words ever could. She would always remember how cold it could get on set. It wasn't because of the air, but because of the quiet, the stress, and the feeling of being alone. But not every run-in with the law was so quiet. Some burned hot and bright like fire. Then Shirley Monin, a fierce rival, came along. The world thought Steel Magnolias was great. In this moving story of love, loss, and strength, 2 Hollywood giants worked together. Their relationship sparkled on camera, but when they weren't together, it was tense. Sally could feel the clash from the first day. She brought an emotional honesty to her part as Manin. She was raw, hurt, and deeply human. She needed the truth. Shirley, on the other hand, saw it as a battle of egos dressed in Southern charm. Every line and every scene turned into a sly tug of war. What people thought was harmony was really a storm that was hard to control. There were rumors on set that she treated every scene like a battleground, bragging about her Oscars, not listening to directions, and always looking for ways to draw attention to herself. Sally always worked like a pro. She smiled when she wanted to scream, hit her marks, and said her lines with quiet ease. She seemed calm on the outside, but she was really tired. There were 17 takes of a key scene that was the emotional center of the movie. It wasn't because Sally stumbled, it was because Shirley wouldn't play it straight. When Sally put all of her heart into something, Shirley would cut her off with sarcasm, turning her real grief into something funny. It looked like she couldn't stand to see anyone else shine. Later, Sally would only hint at the truth by saying Shirley brought a cloud of chaos wherever she went. The truth. She wasn't mean, she was just telling the truth. A creative debate wasn't going on here. It was a clash of egos. Shirley wanted to be in charge. Sally wanted to be real. And when the final cut came around, only one of them was hurt and had to leave the set. People cried during Winans' sad speech, but they had no idea how much pain was going on behind the scenes. But Sally's next co-star would hurt her even more. And that's when Robert Blake came in and stole the show. Say Goodbye Maggie Cole was being filmed, and Sally had to deal with one of the most unstable people she had ever met. Robert Blake, who was famous for his extreme method acting, didn't just act out chaos, he lived it. He lived inside the crazy minds of his characters and brought that crazy energy to the whole set. He wasn't just unpredictable, he was unpredictable itself. For Sally, it was the first time she really knew what it meant to work next to a volcano that was about to explode. Sally could feel the storm coming from the first day. Robert Blake was not only hard to guess, he was chaos in a body. He changed lines at random, stopped scenes in the middle of them, and purposely wrecked well-thought-out moments with pointless improvisations. The freedom to be creative, as he put it. Sally saw it for what it really was: planned damage. Not only in front of the camera, but also behind it. She said Blake was always putting her down. Even worse, his moodiness spread to the whole set. He went from being calm and focused to yelling at technicians, swearing at the lighting crew, or leaving because of small problems in an instant. It was pure hell for Sally, who was already worn out from the emotional weight of her part. She tried to keep the production together by mediating, but the chaos took over everything. In the end, the stress ruined the whole project. Scenes fell apart, trust broke down, and Say Goodbye Maggie Cole was thrown out before it even got to a theater. A movie that was lost because of problems. It could have been just another setback for a lot of performers, but for Sally, it was a very painful wound. In a rare moment of honesty, she later said, "There are actors who really act, and there are those who make everyone else small so they can feel big." The second type was Robert Blake. She made it clear. She wasn't mad but tired in her words. The kind of truth that can only be found after a storm. Sally made a promise to herself as she left that set. There was no way she could make that mistake again. But not all fights started in front of a live audience. Some people were born into a different kind of fame. The shine of award season. Bring in the operator. James Woods. The movie Kiss Me Goodbye was meant to be a fun romance comedy. But Sally could feel a darkness below the surface from the start. That blackness was James Woods himself. He was smart, but he was also moody. His focus turned every scene into a game of chess with his mind. He did more than act. He fought, analyzed, and rewrote, which turned practice sessions into battlegrounds. Because Sally was an actress who needed trust and emotional bond, it was too much for her. She would later say that he was intellectually scary, and that he didn't use his brains to work with others but to control them. He questioned the script, argued with the director, and even said bad things about her performance while the cameras were rolling. It got too bad to be there, but the real wound was not seen on camera. With carefully chosen words, Woods started to make her doubt herself. He told her one day, "You're not giving enough. Your heart's not in it." It might have sounded like noise to some people. It looked like a knife to Sally. He didn't mean for his words to help, they were meant to hurt, and it was the first time in Sally Field's career that she didn't just feel upset, she felt lied to. He did not push Sally to do better. He was killing her confidence and making her question the very instincts that had helped her build her job. That was a bitter truth for Sally Field, a woman who had spent decades fighting for recognition in a field dominated by men. She knew that certain fights didn't happen on TV. Some of them happened in silence, through looks, sounds, and the slow loss of self-worth that no one else could see. Kiss Me Goodbye was no longer a challenge for Sally as an artist. In their minds, it had turned into a trap. It wasn't the part that tired me out, she said in a soft voice. It was having to constantly prove that I deserved to be there. As soon as the movie was over, she didn't give up. She left changed, stronger and smarter. She promised herself something that day. She would never let a man's ego tell her what she was worth again. More importantly, she would never again think that being cocky was the same thing as being smart. Then Dustin Hoffman's name came up, which no one saw coming. Everyone thought Hoffman was invincible. He was a Hollywood legend, a master of method acting, and a man so smart that he was almost holy. But he wasn't a hero to Sally Field. He caused a lot of sadness. They never did anything together. In the early 1980s, though, they almost ran into each other while trying out for a movie that would never be made. For Sally, it was meant to be a fresh start and a chance for two powerhouses to work together. It turned out to be one of the most embarrassing things she had ever done. The mood was all Hoffman's from the moment she walked into the room. He made fun of the producers, read parts of the script out loud, and used the room as his own stage. When Sally started to read, he kept stopping her not just once but several times. He told her what the scene should feel like and fixed her tone and delivery. Instead of being a guide, it was control. In front of everyone, Sally, who has won 2 Emmys, was made to feel like she had never done this before. She wasn't being told what to do. She was being put down. She later said, "It felt like trying out for someone who had already decided I wasn't good enough." After a few days, the last insult came. A person they both knew told her that Hoffman had talked about what he'd done and that he had made sure there was no chemistry. That wasn't just rude to Sally, it was also mean. She thought about the event over and over for weeks, wondering if she had failed in some way. But over time, things became clear. It wasn't her performance that was wrong. That was his need to be in charge and show that he was the best person in the room, no matter what it took. She would say that audition was one of the most embarrassing times in my working life later on. However, it was also a changing point, a wake-up call. From that day on, Sally Field promised something else. She would never work with guys again who thought being cocky was smart. She kept her word this time.